You are about to witness a global movement. The medical system has failed us. Pharmaceuticals are designed to make us sick, weak, dependent. Not anymore. This is the Medicine Girl podcast with renowned healing expert and registered nurse Robin Stebbins. Every week, we shine the light on new ways to heal your body from the root, ignite your inner healer, and tap into your divine wisdom. Begin to live harmoniously with your mind, body, and spirit. You are stronger than you think, braver than you realize. Now is the time to wake up and start living healthier, wealthier, and laugh out loud happier. And here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It is me, Robin Stebbins, and today I am excited to have Keith Mitchell with me today to sit down and have a soul conversation. And so instead of listing your accolades, I think that would take up the whole podcast. It's impressive. I would like you to introduce yourself and what you feel on a soul level is important for people to know about you right now.
Okay, soul level.
The soul level, the heart.
Yeah. Well, my name is Keith Mitchell, as Robin said. Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here and having this dialogue with you. I feel that conversations are something that we're not really familiar with as a collective. I think the way that we get to the space of problem solving, we must have the dialogue. The highest form of love is compassion. Compassion equates to understanding. And the only way we can understand, we have to be in sync to have conversations. We typically have arguments. To have conversations, to bring in new thought, to wish it and wash it in your mind, to realize something different than you've experienced before. However, that being said, obviously I didn't know all this coming in. I went through my whole evolution and coming out of Texas, going through the ranks of a child, wanting to be this football player, and I put my sights on being just that. As a child, I did everything outside the box. My father's a preacher. I was born into spirituality, or not saying religion is spirituality, but I'm saying the spectrum resides there or something like that. But I was raised into that environment, and it taught me at an early age to question. And I kind of took a break of questioning and kind of went with the conditioning and became this athlete. And from this athlete consuming my life on this high competitiveness led me all the way to Texas A&M, to the New Orleans Saints for 6 years, a year in Houston Texans, and a year in Jacksonville. And Jacksonville was my awakening. Jacksonville, I was an all-pro linebacker, so I got paid to hit people. And I was pretty good at it. And but on this one particular hit, I went to tackle someone. We were playing the Buffalo Bills and made a tackle. I ended up on my back, and my body wouldn't respond. Normally when you make a big collision like that, you go into celebrating to build momentum for your team. And on this particular play, I ended up on my back and I couldn't move. I was later diagnosed with a spinal contusion, and I suffered paralysis from the right side of my body. So all the things that I had acquired through that conditioning I mentioned earlier, to go out and conquer the world. And if you go conquer the world and do everything right, then you're supposed to find happiness. So in that state, I had, I think at that time, 3 homes, probably had 6 cars or so around that time. And I was confined to one room in this paralysis. And it began to be, again, my awakening to discover me, to spend that time with myself. And through the process, I learned conscious breathing. And also on another end of the conscious breathing equipped me with the tool that took me out of a victimhood, meaning I could participate in my own healing. In hindsight of that, per our conversation today, it also made me look at how I was conditioned to see medical, how I was conditioned as a child when they say, put this helmet on, put these shoulder pads on, put this equipment on, you will be protected, and how I had actually bought into that. But to realize how that was the first thing. And then the second thing is to have someone tell me that, hey, I don't think you're going to walk again. I don't think you're going to move again. And then see my response and to realize that who are you to diagnose me with anything? And I will not be diagnosed with that. And you cannot tell me, and I will not give you that power. And luckily for me, through the process, I found a tool that could perpetuate me through that conscious breathing. Did I tell you who I was?
That's a lot to unpack, but the beautiful thing and why I'm here on this planet right now is I want people to awaken to that power they have within them. You are in 100% in the driver's seat to that recovery, however that's going to look. And that is the thing. One of the epic failures I see in our medical system is that we tell people really negative things, like you're never going to walk again, or that's not a conversation that really ever needs to be had, or you have 6 months to live. We don't know that. We're not gods. We can't determine that with any degree of accuracy. So in a way, what you're talking about, when you went in and you had your injury, all of a sudden now you go within and you find your awakening.
Yeah. And I think when I think back and I look at it, like, and I feel this is probably consistent with a lot of people, I say there's a you and then there's a self. The self is that soul essence, in my opinion. That you is who you had to be to navigate this world with so much uncertainty, so many unknown things, so much we hadn't been told, learned. So we're navigating without the manual. And typically, you know, and this is, I want people to think about this. You know, I go all over the world teaching my practice and what and the philosophy that I use when it comes to mindfulness. But here's the starting point. We leave the household that we're born into, and you know nothing about life. You've been conditioned about certain things by how the parent does. You know, my father was an entrepreneur, never worked for anybody. He talked about no debt, pay for everything. So you kind of buy into some of that because you're hearing it through in hearsay. And so you follow suit. But the things are the tangible things, relationship things, the things of like life, we have no knowledge of. So we're like going out trying to have experiences and then formulating opinions about ourselves. And if you follow where I'm going with this, without any knowledge, we go out and have experience, knowing nothing about what we're doing. And now on top of that, we begin to diagnose ourselves with false representation, with false understandings. So it puts us in even a more predicament. So that you is navigating. And what we're trying to do, you and I feel, Robin, is we're trying to create that bridge point from you to the self and realize that.
Yes. Well, and it's, in a way, it's taking my ego, which is a very beautiful part of who I am. It's my border, barrier, separation. It's the only way I could love another person, the only way I could love my son, because I see him as separate. I see myself as separate. But that's not who I am in truth. Who I am in truth is this eternal being of consciousness and awareness of that consciousness that has everything I need from within. I don't need anything at that point, but it's integrating all of those facets of myself into this being moving forward, and continually having more and more awareness of different aspects of who I am in truth.
Okay, so now here comes the drama, because the way you're saying it, I get totally. but it's not considering the mill that we're going to be ran through. And from that, we
The
get
hard
trauma.
drive.
We get
The hard
trauma.
drive of experiences, yes.
So I call it trauma. It sounds like you have another terminology for it. But
No,
okay.
I call it, definitely every single person on this planet has gone through some form of trauma or another, and it's all relative.
Okay. So
That accumulates in the hard drive without what you're referring to as like a map of how to navigate it. We start taking all of these experiences and then assigning meaning to it without any roadmap.
Well, that's the starting point. I'm showing how we get there. And so when we go through these experiences, it's not suggesting that we're broken, but it begins to fragment that pure essence that we were born with. So it begins to shape us. It begins to harden us where we feel we need to be. It begins to put us in predicaments. And that can be, again, some of the conditioning, which leads to consequences of choice, things of that nature. But when we show up, my point is, we're not showing up in that wholeness as we think in our minds. It's like when someone wants to transform their health, they have to realize, well, your liver is not the liver it once was when you were a child. That kidney is not the same kidney that it once was when you were a child. We got something else. And it is not good or bad necessarily, but you have to realize this to go forward so we can realize the reality that we want. You follow? So in that,
I follow that. My question to you then is, these experiences that we're integrating into this being are stories. Some of them are just stories of the trauma. So with trauma, I have an event that happens. Something very traumatic has happened to me. It's maybe an hour, maybe 5 minutes, but unlike the rest of the animal kingdom, I have the ability to carry that story with me. So it's like these heavy burdens now I'm lacing on top of who I am in truth. And then that is becoming my unconscious reactions to my life until I have now the awareness of these stories so that I can release them.
Okay, well, twofold, like, because I compartmentalize stories to realities differently. So, like, say, you can go through a trauma, right? And a lot of the traumas, I would even go on the limb and say majority of the traumas that we, put ourselves through are more or less self-induced. We create it. And but the thing about, and then there's some trauma that happens, like you can go have an accident on the freeway. That's a trauma that you necessarily didn't, it's a consequence of doing something that happens, right? So from that you can say, well, life has made me the victim. Life has put me in this situation. That's a story. That's
your story on the event.
Yeah.
You're assigning meaning to the event.
Yeah, you're creating a meaning to it. And see, and the idea of what I feel you're speaking about, and what I believe in as well, is that we don't have to create stories. It happened, it is what it was, and let's move to another direction.
Yes.
So what happens is, a lot of times we begin to define ourselves by these situations, these circumstances. And then by defining ourselves by these things, well, we never allow ourselves to move through it. Like, it's like if you say, I have cancer, then you even heal from it. Then I'm a cancer survivor. Well, cancer shouldn't even be on your staple. It shouldn't even be around your title. You should let that go. But for whatever reason, we've been conditioned to drag the trauma, because it's always boiling down to the poor me, little me, things of that nature. So hopefully people understand that dynamic, because there's a way that we can create stories about this I call them cliches, a lot of cliches, this is happening.
Word for it, cliches either. One of the cleanest examples I've read is in Martha Beck's book, Finding Your Way in a Wild New World, where she describes a adult giraffe watching its baby get mauled at the watering hole by a lion. And you can see on the adult mother's face just this horror, sadness. Then after it's done, she shakes it off and runs off, releasing herself from the story and the trauma. She doesn't have the ability to carry around the story of this poor me. Now I've got to, drinking too much and smoking to salve my wounds, and I can't get out of bed. And that doesn't happen. It's just clean. It's clean pain in that moment. Humans, and what I think we're both talking about now, it gets messy, especially when we're talking about really deep traumas like rape or sexual molestation. Those are really hard for some people to release. It's these deep wounds that now we're carrying with us, and it's defining who we are. But that's not who we are in truth. It's just our story of the trauma.
Right, which kind of gets into attachments.
It's attachment to your story. So another word is wound fondling. We're like the cat that can't stop licking its wound. So you got to wear the cone of shame. Is what we're wearing, these spiritual cones of shame to try and prevent us from licking these wounds, instead of saying, like, the wounds happened in an isolated event. Now I'm wounding myself by carrying the story. I think that's when we release ourselves from the past.
Well, even in the sense that, when you realize life presents itself, it's like the happenings of life is the rent that we pay to be here. It's like, it's the consequences of life, our attachments to our ideas of how we feel life is supposed to go is where we get derailed. I actually talk about that in the book, and I differentiate the two, because also your experience can also be the medicine. It is the medicine.
It is the medicine.
It is the medicine. It is the medicine of, like, sharing it and putting it out into the planet where there's other people who have endured the same thing. And from your light, they can also rehabilitate their minds or themselves.
Once you've transcended the trauma, then you can share your story, because there's a difference with people sharing stories I'm still in the place of victimhood, and no judgment for being there. I've been there myself. I know what it feels like, but this is recognizing the gifts in it. There's no such thing as a one-sided coin. With every trauma, there comes gifts and ways to awaken yourself in truth. So I believe forgiveness, I've wrestled with this for a really long time. I believe forgiveness is I'm releasing you from my story of who you are or what happened or the event. So it has nothing to do with you. You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to be alive, and I can release you and I can forgive you from my story of the past.
Right. And I agree with that. However, the one thing I may not so much agree with is that you can still extend your medicine as you continue to build through your trauma. The healing in some cases will be the lifetime. And that's okay, because you have a lifetime to give it. Perfection is like they say, fallacy in that sense. And again,
that just, I hate to interrupt, but that's a really good thing for me to kind of wrap my head around right now, is we're never there. We're never awakened. I don't believe there's been a person or will ever be that's quote unquote awakened or transcended a trauma fully. We're works in progress, and we're waves of remembering and forgetting. So the part I'm talking about is when we're still underneath the story. And sometimes we need to keep sharing it. I think if you're sharing that same story, though, it's still making you the victim. That's when, then I believe you have not yet come to a place where you've gotten enough distance from it and released the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that.
It gets sticky. It gets really sticky when we're talking about this, because I think we all have significant traumas that have happened at one point or another.
Well, yeah,
And
but that's the spice of life, though. I'd say the only thing that differentiates from the student to the teacher is the teacher can talk about their experiences unapologetically, and the student is still learning how to.
yes, yeah, and I think that's why we're here. We're not here. You know, there's been all sorts of movies and shows about what would happen if it was just heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's no one-sided coin. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be heaven anymore, because you need the contrast. I can't know joy unless I know sadness. I can't
What do you feel
know.
about the concept of the 5D component of going into straight truth, no polarities?
Perhaps. And that's what I have seen. And this is why I am on this mission to share. We are either feeding or cultivating our field of disease, or we're cultivating our field of wellness. I have
We have to come to grips with that. We have to come to grips with that. And I think before, like, there's no healing in denial. And for most of people in this country, in the Western Hemisphere, we're in a lot of denial of the agenda-based constructs, the oppression constructs that have been in place that have maybe missed a certain part of the demographics and touched others. So they're like, oh, these are other people. This is not me. But that other ultimately is you. That other is the illusion. That other is reason why you will be in line for the vaccination when they propose it. You know, it's like that other is like, if we don't do something about it. But see, that's the awakening. And like people, because it hasn't been taught to them in this such, it's like, again, they stand and hold these hierarchy in this elitism. These ideas like, oh, I'm middle class or I'm upper class, you know, and that's all fallacy. That's all illusionary concepts. Yes. And hopefully I've been speaking this a lot, especially with the COVID concept, because the COVID has brought a lot of different things out. It's like, no matter how successful, how much money you feel you have, we're shutting that shit down. You're gonna put you in your house. You got your fine cars. You can't drive anywhere but to the grocery store. You got your fine shoes, your $1,000 suits. Well, that's in the closet unless you want to wear it to the grocery store. You know, so this upper class, this middle class, in a sense, is all locked in just like everybody else. We even have a fundamental of how to build relationships. We don't even know how to build relationships.
I could go.
You haven't built a relationship with yourself. It's like we have an idea that's
we have
like
fairy tales,
illusions. Yeah, fairy tales, and it's not based off of any fundamental, and it's just showing us our truth. And again, that's the 5D component. It's like life is coming and it's going to put itself right in your lap. If you want to believe in Jesus or God or your ideas of all these things, well, why are you hiding in your closet? If you want to believe in Buddha, you want to believe in Krishna, whoever you want to believe in, why are you hiding? Just like everybody else. And yeah, you've been doing it for 15, 20 years. Well, guess what? You're hiding like the person who has been doing anything. So what's the point of having your power, your higher thoughts of yourself, your meditations of yourself, and you're still hiding in a closet like everybody else? So
we're just adopting another set of paradigms, another dogma, another set of rules to follow to fit in.
Well, it's just showcasing what you really have. And this is why, you know, I'm so intrigued. And that's why I wrote this book, the Mindfulness Playbook, because, you know, in competitive sports, it's like we have this thing. You feel you're strong, you feel you're talented. Well, here's the field, and you got an immense amount of competitors, opponents, And let's see. And we're going to film it. And not only we're going to film it, we're going to put it on national TV and let the whole world look at it. And we're going to see how good you are. We're going to see how strong you are. We're going to see how mentally tough you are. You know what I'm saying? So you got all these people on the Instagram and the Facebook, they're working out and they think they're strong. Put yourself in the environment where you're tested. See, here's the thing that I get excited about. If you feel you have all these components, you should want to embrace the realities of life. I have a chapter called Embrace Conflict, because conflict is necessary. Now, the burden of the word is, it comes with so much confusion and such. So I say conflict is the interaction of life. It's the natural interactions of life. People come, people go. We have interactions that are necessary. Some people are going to be positive, some people are going to be negative. You have to engage and you have to hold your intention. I call your intention your playbook. You have to initiate your intention one way or the other. You don't have to be best friends with these people, but you have to engage, and how you engage speaks to what your practice is. It speaks to how sound you are, how spiritual you are. It speaks to all these different things that you talk about, but now let's see it in action.
And that's what we are of this earth. We are physics. We're not separate from it. We're not separate from the universe. We are the universe. That's science. So the universe in harmony is chaos. Chaos and peace. Chaos and peace. Something has to die for something to live. Something like the fires right now going on behind me. That's a healthy portion of the forest. So, and the same with us. I need to engage in life. The only way I know who I am is when I test myself to the fullest. How can I do that if I'm not a NFL football player? How can I do that if I'm not a Navy SEAL?
Put yourself in the game. Right. You just choose to live, choose to be free. All the things that you're speaking about will be the consequences that you endure, because when you set a precedent in a world where most people don't, like we have this idea, this illusions of morals and ethics. You can't have morals and ethics in a competitive environment. You can't have that in capitalism. You're trying to win at every cost possible, you know? So it's like, this is fallacy. Then you want to put the 10 Commandments on it? Are you kidding me? It's like, it's just so bizarre to watch. And I can see how people buy into it, because at some point in my life, I bought into it too. But then you realize.
It's fear. Fear is the drug. Fear is the drug. And I heard that expression before, but I have never seen it so embodied as it is right now globally. And yeah. I have seen us, nurses, healthcare professionals, just posting ways to boost your immune system, getting shredded, it's like the narrative, the fear-based narrative people do not want to let that go.
Yeah,
that's their drug right now.
This is the thing, fear. Let's talk about fear. I mean, you need to renegotiate your relationship with fear. You will not live on this planet without fear. So we cannot, from this hierarchy of like language and say, well, just let your fear go. You're not going to that's not a reality. So what you can't do is allow fear, which is going to be a natural component in you because you've lived with it so long. You can't allow fear to dictate you. You can't allow fear to shut you down. If I would tell you that I didn't have fear playing and going up against 350-pound men who wanted to knock my head off at some point, I'd be lying, but I don't allow fear to define me. And by doing that, I get to knock some of those 350-pound men out myself.
Right.
So
that's exactly, so your fear, we're born with two fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of heights. Everything else is learned. So as we're seeing fear, it's an acronym for false evidence appearing real. There is the idea, you could get injured on the field, and you did, but was it worth, did it change whether you were afraid or not afraid, or just looked at your fear and became teammates with that fear? Because that, again, that's part of being in the arena.
Well, that's why I say you have to negotiate your nature with fear, your relationship with fear. And fear, I mean, you know, you can, there's levels to it. Like you mentioned the gridiron or playing football. Well, you can give your heart to someone and then they decide they don't want your heart no more. At the same time, there are consequences, and more or less, you've suffered some of those consequences leading up to that. So the nature of putting yourself out there again, you can have fear, but what I'm trying to suggest is the same consequences can be consistent or just as, you know, dramatic or just as traumatic of an experience. It's just, that's the nature of this world. And so what I'm suggesting is to create a formula. See, now I'm suggesting to create a formula of how you navigate the world. And on a consistent basis, you run your formula 24/7. So over time, you build this, I call superpower, your intuition, to realize wisdom of how to yin and yang it, the dance, the give and receive component, and how to be in that way. That's my solution.
But then that's freedom for everything. There's no God above you. There's no God telling me what to put in my mouth, what pills to take, what to eat, how to live my life. So and the more awakened we become, then we know what is my actual choice authentically, what is the programming, what is the domestication, what is my parents' voice, what is the teacher's voice, what is my coach's voice, until it becomes, here's my voice. This is who I am. I see the game now. I see beyond the veil.
Here's the thing that I've been playing with lately, because when you put a skill next to authenticity, and they kind of contradict each other, but they also allow you to stay the course. And the skill ultimately can be authentic and your truth, because you've been in the places where that haven't served you, so you want to go in this direction. So it's building a skill to initiate your authenticity.
But first you have to know who you are.
Well, it's a development, because you is kind of, when you define you as stagnant, so there's a ceiling. If you don't define, if you can't allow, it's like how I teach mindfulness is the practice of the developmental practice of being human with the capacity to be all these things above. I could be an athlete, I can be an entrepreneur, I can be a philanthropist, I can be a meditation teacher, yoga teacher. I'm all of these things. I have the capacity to be all of those things and then more. So I don't put myself in that you, in a sense of like I mentioned in the earlier, you is how you have to be to navigate into this world, not knowing. But when you know who you are, right, that's infinite. And to allow yourself to be closest to that place we talk about infinity, well, we can't give ourselves that ceiling. We have to give ourselves nothing but that potential. Or, it's like it's like I tell people who use the word passion, well, you cannot compartmentalize life. You have to be excited about all of life, or you can't have none of life. It's like the Pythagorean theorem. What you do on one side, you have to do on the other to balance the equation.
Well, absolutely. But the question then becomes like, yeah, you can be all those things. You can be whatever your heart is desiring within limits. Like, I'm not going to be an NFL linebacker, no matter how hard I try. But again, when all of those things go away and I'm just locked in a room, paralyzed, who am I?
Well, see, I said capacity.
Am I gone?
I said capacity.
Right.
Capacity, that goes beyond a finite, that goes beyond, in all aspects of human activity, you should know something about it. You should know, like, there's a reason why you don't know something about yourself. Like, how do you heal yourself? How do you begin to access the steps of knowing about your health? Why are you at a certain age of your life and you don't know anything about what you can contribute to your own health? And even if you, and see, knowing it is not by, in your mind, like you know it in your mind. Knowing is the actual actions. Gratitude is in actions, not in words. So we got a weird society of, we formalize words like I love you, but then we miss out on the actions of showcasing the love. We say words.
All of it.
It's like, but it's a lot of facets to that. It's like, so it's like we have to learn, like if it's religion, know something about it. Not just what you've been told, do your own personal due diligence. Politics, all these different things.
Don't be
know
ignorant
something about
on
it.
any of these 9 things. You shouldn't be ignorant on any of these topics. But again, when you are awakening to your power, to your infinite being, you will, I believe in my heart that you will naturally gravitate towards these things and create a thirst for learning and for knowledge, and because there's no God above you. So now let's see, I haven't been sick, and I don't even remember the last time, but I absolutely know how to heal myself. But I also know what I'm doing every single day in my life is creating wellness. I am in control of my health. I am not afraid that I will get these diseases because I know I'm in tandem with the cell membranes. I can communicate with my body. My body communicates to me when something's out of alignment from the beginning. It's a vibrational state. I'm having an off day. I'm not going to judge myself. I'm not shaming myself. I'm not a bad person. I'm out of alignment. Where do I, kind of when you're sailing, where do you tweak those trim tabs? Just a little bit. Instead of waiting until your sailboat's crashing into the buoy, I'm navigating it with very a fine finesse, creating harmony with my body.
And that makes total sense. However, society as a collective, and maybe we're moving in that direction, but we have a huge portion of society that's not in tune as such.
That's why I'm here right now talking to you. Mm-hmm. I at least want to give people the knowledge that there's a different way, showing that you are in power. I love your howevers. Okay, here we go.
Because I've eliminated the word "but" in my vocabulary. However,
I like it.
Society has been conditioned, and they did a great job of realizing or putting the fallacy in most people's minds that someone outside of you is going to save you. Someone that you pray to, someone's out in the ethers is supposed to bring you.
That's capitalism, my friend.
So when I worked in medical, I saw patients who would come in for everything. They need a pill for everything, and they're dependent on this pill to be their solution. Now here's where it gets tricky. Now the status quo, meaning the system, the medical system, does not give the intel to these people. They don't tell them that, hey, if you drink this could potentially give you this, even though they write it, but people don't read. It's like they don't
believe it. God told me to take it. I don't need to read the leaflet. That's irrelevant. And that is their God.
But it was conditioned that way. It was conditioned.
I agree. And this is why people can't understand there is a choice. And I do it and have been doing it for 30 years in the medical system. By just showing them they have sovereignty over their own bodies. And every single person I've ever worked with wakes up to that. Some of them still choose to stay on 100 different prescription medications, and that's fine. Right. I support that as long as there's another option.
Okay, so now we're just talking about the medications. And what I'm saying, and I agree with you on the medications. Now let's go to the food. The circumstances in which they've created the trauma that they've created. Like there's a quote I love. It's like, you're born with the aesthetics of your mother and father, but you die of the choices that you made. You die looking like the choices you made.
That's
And
10% your genetics.
yeah, yeah. And so a lot of these different things, what we eat, the way we eat, these conditionings, these hardwired conditionings begin to also be the catalyst to why we're in those situations, on top of the container in which we live, which has another, we call it epigenetical aspect, the environmental influence on the chaos that's created. And again,
but then to back it up too, I think this point is so important. It's when we lock ourselves in, well, you're going to McDonald's and you're addicted to Baskin Robbins and you're drinking too much. Stop. Here's the huge point I want to make. There is a reason you started that in the first place. There's a reason you're addicted to sugar. You're soothing some part of your emotional self. It's not a dish of ice cream and you're satisfied. You got to eat the whole tub. And when we shame somebody, when we blame them and we're like, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and don't eat like that, it doesn't land. That's why we're in the position that we're in as this country. So
I agree.
First, as a doctor, I should never say, hey, Keith, your blood pressure is high. Here's amlodipine and here's Lasix because you're going to need to take the water off. I don't ask you about what you're eating. I don't ask you about who you're spending your time with. I don't ask you about your spiritual practices. All of those come into play. To heal that, first I got to get to the root, though. I got to get to what caused this in the first place.
This is an allopathic medical system, not a holistic medical system.
No.
This is why you have specialists. This is why you have a kidney, liver specialist. It's like they don't bring it all together. They're out of nature in our medical system. So in a sense, it's working. It's working to the strategy to the system and how it was constructed. It's supporting, it's bringing members
100%.
to constantly keep this will. It's supporting the dysfunction, the dis-ease. It's like when you begin to make a sickness an industry, well, you don't have an expected cure because then those jobs will be wiped out. That revenue will be wiped out.
The perfect capitalistic structure is I give you a pill that makes your numbers look good, but makes you sicker. A cholesterol medication is a great example. Statins, there's a lot of debate over them. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not promoting one way or the other, but there's some very harmful side effects to statins that most people don't know. It decreases your testosterone. It increases your blood sugar, whether you're eating sugar or not. But now I've created this consumer, this lifelong consumer that is now, I just gave them one pill, and by the end of their life, they're on 30 or 40. That's a great business model for dark energy.
Right.
But
so now you have to, and particularly in the world what they considered white supremacy, why would they create something like this?
let me ask you that, because I've, aside from money, because I see these guys have more money than they will be able to spend in 10 lifetimes. What do you think is the why?
Well, you got to go through history. I'm just gonna, I'm a big believer just going through history and let history show itself. The first thing I think about is miscegenation laws. You familiar with miscegenation laws?
Yeah.
Miscegenation laws, your wife, your mother, grandmother, you wouldn't allow her to vote. You wouldn't allow her to have a voice. Why would you do that? So you got this concept here. Now you got supposedly superiority, but it sounds more like a fragility because, the nature is if you're so superior, we'll create an even playing field. So you can't claim superiority if you constantly manipulate the rules. You don't even make a clear game. You give the 10 commandments and then you say, well, okay, I'm gonna keep moving the goal line up 5, 10 yards when you achieve. So you can't even claim superiority. What is it? You know, what is it? And you
The
know,
stem is either fear or love.
well, that works to a point, yeah. But then here you go into it. Now let's go into a fact behind that. So, and there's an amazing teacher that I had the privilege to learn from, and her name was Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. You should look her up.
Okay.
And she says, because the nature of the genetics and how the genetics presents themselves, a person classified as a Black man, a person classified as a Black woman, changed the whole demographics of race throughout the population if you present the even playing field to love. And it's the only race of people that can do that. If I have a child with a person who's Asian, Hispanic, Spanish, what have you, that child is African. That child is Black. So the words of Frances Cress Welsing, she stated, because she's an ancestor now, she's like, for the white culture to truly love the Black culture is genetic annihilation, because we will wipe out genetically the whole population, because the indigenous or the original people are the dominant genotype.
Right. So that's fear.
Survival.
I'm afraid, because survival is you're taking my food. You're taking my water. Survival isn't like, well, my kids are going to be a different color. That's learned.
Well, hold on. That's your existence. That's the existence. Yes. So now let's go back to medical. The biggest killer on the planet when it comes to cancer, breast cancer is what, 14 million cases a year? Well, guess what's greater than that? The greatest cancer on the planet. And guess what it is? Skin cancer.
And we didn't have those 58 million cases of skin cancer a year until we started using sunscreen. So go ahead.
Okay, sure. Guess who's not susceptible to skin cancer? People of color.
We have more melanin. Yeah.
People of color. And guess what makes them susceptible to it? The only time they're susceptible to it when they've had a pre-existing condition and they have had radiation to suppress their immune system.
Yep.
Going into this because we'll check what else suppresses your immune system or bleaches out your immune system. The bleach and the white starches that they put in a lot of the food. A lot of the areas are food deserts. And you talk about the faux food like McDonald's, which gives me another interesting thing. I had this mentor,
Frankenfoods.
His name is Dick Gregory. And I'm glad you even mentioned that, because that's where I was going with that. Because we're afraid of Frankenstein, which to the first part of our conversation, we're talking about the behavioral patterns. We're talking about fear. We're talking about like the you, the self, and the you is the who, who's been here without knowing anything. It's had to navigate. Well, guess what? You have been manipulated. You are not even your true essence. You have been mutated from the human construct that you originally were to something else. So we're afraid of Frankenstein, hence the consequences. But nobody's ever looking at Dr. Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein gets a pass.
Right, exactly. We're being puppeted. But there's those of us that see the game, we're the threat. This is the grassroots movement that I want to create.
You don't see like you once did see. You don't have the capacity, the humanist. Like say, science has come up, and science is tricky. And how I define science, science is spirituality seen, and spirituality is science unseen, right? So I look at it like, so from a person eating processed foods, their palate, if they were to go to eat natural foods the next day, will not will not likely want to take in the natural foods because the palate is desensitized from natural foods. And that's the norm. That's the norm from every country I've ever been to. I've traveled at this point in my life, 46 different countries, and every country is set up like this. And these food deserts are established, and these people are eating these foods that have this white bleach, and this bleach is bleaching out their immune system. In how I define immune system is your innate intelligence. And when that's wiped out, even the people saying that I have high pain tolerance, I'm numb, they are really just that. They're numb. They can't feel. You've replaced the human to something else. You've created a genetic modified human.
Yes. Well, and the pharmaceutical industry is responsible for the curriculum that the medical doctors go through. Mm-hmm. So it's indoctrinated. And what do you do when you're in medical school? You got to go and, eat crappy food and survive. So it's indoctrinating the indoctrination.
Right.
For those listening and not getting overwhelmed, it's simply start to awaken to your truth, start to hear your voice. There's the difference between the egoic voice and the soul's voice.
So for the people who are listening, let's give them some solutions on the back end of this.
Yes. Yes, please.
I'll give you a solution. Conscious breathing we talked about earlier. Just breathing from the belly, inhale through the nose and out of the mouth. Breathing from the belly, the internal organs get stagnant. They get compression from not being and living in a sedentary lifestyle, not really moving the body like we should. These places get stuck. The liver holds anger, kidneys hold fear, the gut, the intestines hold worry, the heart and lungs are grief. So when we begin to allow this expansion of the body with just simply breathing, it allows the nourishment to travel into some of these areas that have been so confined, so stuck. So it's an opportunity to allow that blood flow to move through the body. And I suggest you start a regimen of just breathing like that daily. And if you can find an asana, which is a seated practice, where you can sit maybe back against the wall, breathe for maybe 5-10 minutes, whatever you can afford for its time to do so. Second thing, water. As soon as you wake up, a glass of water, 8 ounces, 6 ounces, 4 ounces, whatever you can consume. And yes, you're going to urinate a lot, your body's flushing, detoxing, right? So maybe make your last cup of water no later than 8 o'clock. So you won't have an interruption of sleep, right? Okay, so that's 2 things. The third thing, begin to regiment how and when you eat. Try to have the least amount of food before noon. Your body's still flushing up to noon. Have a smoothie. I would suggest if you need something, wake up with smoothie. I use a superfood called sea moss. It has 92.
That's good.
And implement that into your diet. Make your big meal around noon to 3 o'clock, because the sun is around its highest point. So it's going to help you helping you secrete the serotonin, the heat that you need to process your food. In the evenings, the body's secreting melatonin, so it wants to relax. So have a smaller meal no later than 8 o'clock. So because your body wants to go into relaxation, so be with it, allow it to go into relaxation. And if you need snacks in between, find healthier choices of snacks. And so those are some simple ways that you can start today of how you can transform your health right now. And the fourth thing is sleep. Allow yourself to get sleep. We consume about 80% of our oxygen when we're sleeping. That's why sleep is so important. And when you're not getting sleep, you're not allowing your body to rejuvenate and heal.
That's when we heal.
Yes. So get sleep. So we just gave you 4 things, no charge. These are things that you can, I'm gonna give you a bonus round. Get in the sun.
Yes. Now I'm feeling positive.
Get your body in the sun and let it just take in the rays, get your body used to it. Because what happens is, here's the thing, since we talked about skin cancer, the people in the regions where the sun is like in the West Coast, California, and like, you know, Arizona, people are not getting skin cancer there because their skin has adapted to the sun. The places where they're getting the high cases of skin cancer is in the Wyomings and the Idahos and these types of regions where you know, things of that nature. So get your body in the sun, right?
Get your body in the sun with as much of your body exposed as you can for like 20 to 30 minutes in when it's a high in the sky.
I second that.
And then I'm going to add one thing to your water. When you start your day with the water, a really beautiful way. Water is living, water responds, water has memory. You can write an intention on a piece of paper and put it on your glass, or you can pray. There's water prayers. You can put the prayers into the water, set your intentions for the day after your breath work would be amazing. So, and that's a really beautiful practice to get in with all of these things. And these are very simple things that we're talking, 30 minutes? You could probably accomplish all of this, maybe even 20.
Yes. Really easy to do. And get excited about it, and, you know, fixate your mind and, you know, look at it as an investment. You know, the highest currency we have is our time. And if you can't give time to yourself, then the expectation of anybody else doesn't even make sense. You should find yourself or build the idea of worth for yourself, to want to give this love and affection and attention to yourself. So give yourself that. You deserve that.
I'm going to write that in the show notes because that's inspiring, and that's absolutely true. When you start looking at yourself as important and as God, and you treat yourself as a temple, amazing things start to open up and release when you need to release. So with that, I'm feeling extremely positive right now in the midst of everything. So Keith Mitchell, I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart and soul. Deep gratitude for being with me today and sharing your voice.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. Stay tuned to have a really interesting book coming out, the Mindfulness Playbook, 8 Strategies for Winning at the Game of Life. And if you want to know more about me, you can always go to keithmitchell59.com. It will have all my social media handles there. Check out, we got a lot of different things coming up. So I'm really excited about those who want to create a new paradigm, create the shift. And I'm here with so many suggestions of how we can do so. So yeah, reach out to me, follow us, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here on your platform.
Thank you. And I will have all of those links in the show notes. And I think it's so inspiring. You know, people can hear you today. You're a really smart guy and you go deep, but the way you break down the simple strategies to implement that all of us can do.
Yes. Yes.
At any point in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love. That's inspired.
Yes.